Hi, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the parents' perspective of asthma and how it was when I was younger versus how it is today, and some of the impacts that it kind of has on my life as a parent. Um, when I was young, back in the like early '60s, we didn't really. I was never diagnosed with asthma, but I can remember many times when um, I'd be playing football in the spring or the fall, exercising outside, have trouble breathing, barely could catch a breath, worried about, gee, should I stop immediately, keep playing, try to keep pushing through it or whatever. Um, well, my parents had me to the doctor a number of times. I was always diagnosed with allergies and that kind of thing. I can remember nights when it was so hard to breathe that my parents had to sit up with me for at least hours, and they had a brass tea kettle, and they put that on the stove, fill it with water, and until the steam would rise up, and I have to take a towel, get far enough away from the steam so that it wouldn't burn my face, and put the towel over there so it would come up and breathe in the steam just to loosen up my lungs enough so that I could breathe, so I could sleep comfortably. And I used to have to go to get allergy patch tests, and they do all that, and they give you the shots, and that's still one of the things that they try to use today. In my case, I can tell you it didn't do any good at all. They might have thought it was doing some good at the time, but by the time I was old enough to go away to college, wasn't a very good patient at that time, so there were more things to do, more fun things to do at college than go to the infirmary and get an allergy shot every week. So I kind of stopped doing that, and I don't know whether it was probably more the timing that I was going through, late adolescence, body changing, becoming an adult, whatever the changes in my body, and fortunately after that I really never had asthma again. But now I have 3 kids, and 2 of them have asthma very severely, and they're older now, and they had it when they were like 4 or 5, when we first discovered what it was. And I got to tell you, the medical profession kind of let us down there. By my youngest had, my oldest actually, firstborn, had constant colds and viruses and lung congestion and trouble breathing, and it was always diagnosed as bronchitis. And finally, when he was like 4, had a very bad attack. Actually, it was kind of funny because I was playing with it was a blow-up clown rounded thing with the weighted base plastic, and it's kind of used as a punching bag. Punch it, falls over, and then it comes back up again. He absolutely loved that thing, and he played for a half hour straight, knocking that thing down, and finally he couldn't breathe anymore. And that's kind of when we found out there was something called exercise-induced asthma, which was one of his triggers, was exercise. That's when we took him to the doctor, and he was diagnosed, instead of bronchitis, with asthma, after we'd taken him multiple times and been treated for the wrong thing, and he nearly died at that time. So we kept closer tabs on things, and that's the scary part with the parenting of a child with asthma, is you've got your child at night can't sleep, struggling to breathe. Do you take them to the hospital? Do you give them some medicine and hope that it works and subsides? You give them Prevental. Now they use the Prevental inhalers and nebulizers, which seem pretty effective at the time, but sometimes within an hour you get the asthma back again. So I can't tell you how many times we had to go to the hospital. Our children were admitted. First time we took my son, they put him in we wouldn't let the parents stay overnight. So we went back the next day. We come in the morning, and he's in like a hospital bed, child size, elevated, and it's got bars and bars on all sides, like he's in a cage. And would have been pretty upset about that, but he was looking like he was feeling better. And in fact, by the end of the day, that day, he was running up and down the hallway in the hospital pestering everybody. I don't know how many laps he did. Absolutely could not stop him. Thought it was good at the time because figured, oh well, he's cured. You know, he's cured this episode. We're over the hump. And in fact, he was so hyper, we just took him out of the hospital before the doctor could even come in and discharge him. We just couldn't wait anymore and watch him running around the hospital annoying everybody. So we just pulled him out. But then that, as years went by, we figured out that that's something you really need to be careful of when you take your kids to the hospital, is because they do the treatments, the breathing treatments, every so often, and while the kid's still hooked up to the monitors, you got to watch the heart rate. So it turned out that I guess his heart rate was so high that he just couldn't slow down. And that was when he was small. And then my other son was hospitalized, and you got to be careful because the respiratory therapists that come in and do the treatment, they're not doctors. They don't watch anything. You got to really watch the monitors for when that are keeping track of your child's heart rate, because the respiratory people just are supposed to come in every 2 hours or whatever and give a treatment. And my one son, his heart rate was up to 150, almost 160 beats a minute. He was feeling fine, he was breathing fine, he's laying in the hospital bed wide awake, obviously, because his heart rate is zooming, and in comes a respiratory therapist to give him another treatment. And that's, you know, as a parent, step in. If you don't think something's right, question it. We did. The nurses came in, checked looked at the monitor, saw his heart rate was so high, said, you know, we don't need to give him any more treatments because he was doing fine. So that's one word of advice I'd give to parents at this point. You know, learn as much as you can about asthma. Watch for your triggers. One way our lives were, as parents and as a family, were impacted is one of the triggers for both of my sons was cigarette smoke. And my wife and I don't smoke, but my wife's parents did. And so anytime we would go to their house, if my kids were asthma free for a week, go to their house, and even though they were, you know, they didn't smoke around the kids, sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, but even just the smoke from the house would set them off. We'd bring them home, and we'd be a week with battling, you know, asthma attacks for an entire week. So the impact was we didn't get to really ever leave our kids with their grandparents to spend a night or a weekend. We just couldn't do it. So grandparents lost out. We didn't get any spare time of our own away from the kids. So I mean, it was kind of a tough situation there. So, you know, take charge of your own thing. Read as much as you can about it. And I hope that pretty soon they'll find something that will actually cure the disease rather than treating the symptoms.